She was humiliated and fired, not knowing she was the CEO's mother. The fallout of this revelation shocked everyone. But let's start from the beginning. The beginning of the conflict, Grace. Williams, a 68-year-old black woman, walked into the spacious office of Orbital Tech on her first day of work, carefully pushing a cleaning cart in front of her. The morning started quietly, but her presence immediately drew disapproving looks. Employees avoided making eye contact with the janitor, while some openly regarded her with contempt. The office manager, Richard Blake, known for his ruthlessness and arrogance, noticed her right away. His cold eyes scanned Grace, and he quickly made a judgment. "Another old woman I'll have to fire for poor performance." Richard firmly believed that low-level employees didn't deserve respect, and humiliating subordinates had become his everyday entertainment. "Are you Grace, I assume?" he asked, without bothering to smile. "Yes, sir. I've just started today," she replied calmly. "Good. We have standards here. Make sure you don't let us down," he snapped, before walking away. Later, Richard saw Grace cleaning the conference room, which was being prepared for an important client meeting. Frowning, he noticed a speck of dust on the edge of the table. "This is outrageous," he bellowed, loud enough for everyone in the open office to hear. "Do you see this? Is this the level of cleanliness we're paying for?" he continued, addressing the employees nearby. They quickly averted their eyes, fearing to draw his wrath. "Sir, I'll take care of it right away," Grace said calmly, but Richard was already boiling with anger. "Take care of it? Why are you even here if you can't do your job right the first time? This is your last chance or you're out," he barked before storming off. Employees whispered among themselves about the incident, but none dared to intervene. However, Jason, a young analyst, had accidentally recorded part of the scene on his phone. Struck by the injustice, he decided to keep the footage in case things spiraled out of control. Meanwhile, Grace continued working without a word, showing no sign of how deeply the insults had hurt her. But inside, she knew this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Escalation. The next morning, Grace arrived at the office as usual, determined to maintain her dignity despite the previous day's humiliation. Her calm demeanor only irritated Richard further. He thought firing her would not only serve as an example, but also reinforce his authority over the team. "Grace!" he called out loudly across the office. His voice echoed, freezing everyone in their tracks. "In my office, now," he added without waiting for her response. Grace followed him without showing any sign of anxiety. Once she entered, Richard shut the door behind her and began his tirade. "Do you know why I called you in?" he started with a mocking smirk. "No, sir, but I'm ready to listen," she replied calmly. Richard sneered. "Yesterday you displayed a complete lack of respect for this company's standards. This place demands pristine cleanliness and professionalism, and you're a disgrace to this office. I've thought it over all night and decided that as of today, you no longer work here. Leave immediately." Grace looked at him steadily, a spark igniting in her eyes. "Are you sure this is the right decision, sir?" "I'm sure I don't want to see you here another day," he snapped. Grace nodded silently, turned and left the room. The office was filled with tense, wary stares from her colleagues. Some avoided looking at her. Others seemed unsure of what to say. Among them, Jason, the young analyst, froze at his desk, his face showing growing outrage. As Grace quietly gathered her belongings, Jason worked up the courage to approach her. "Miss Williams, this isn't fair. He's always like this. You don't deserve this," he whispered, trying to console her. Grace gave him a gentle smile and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you, young man. Everything comes full circle in life. I'm certain the truth will come out." Jason watched her leave, a deep sense of guilt gnawing at him. For a long time, he had witnessed Richard's bullying, but stayed silent, fearing for his career. This time, however, he could no longer stand by. Making sure no one was watching, Jason opened his email and found the address of Marcus Williams, the company's CEO. He quickly attached the video of Richard humiliating Grace, which he had recorded the day before, and typed a brief message. "Dear Mr. Williams, this is important. You need to see how manager Richard Blake treats employees. This is unacceptable." With a deep breath, Jason hit send. He felt a mix of relief and fear. He knew this could have consequences for his job, but his sense of justice outweighed his apprehension. Meanwhile, across the city, Marcus Williams was sitting in his office, reviewing emails. When he opened Jason's message, his face turned pale. On his screen, he saw his mother, Grace, being subjected to demeaning treatment within his company's walls. His heart tightened with anger, but he quickly composed himself. Acting impulsively would only make things worse. That evening, Marcus made a decision. The next day, he would hold a meeting with the entire staff to get to the bottom of what was happening in his company. He needed to expose Richard, but in a way that wouldn't reveal his true motives right away. The following morning, Marcus entered the office, surprising the employees. It was rare for the CEO to make personal visits to departments. At 10 a.m. today, there will be a company-wide meeting. Everyone will have a chance to speak, he announced, scanning the room with a firm gaze. Meanwhile, Richard sat smugly in his office, unaware that his reign of terror was about to crumble. An unexpected turn of events. At 10 a.m., the office gathered in the spacious conference room. Employees exchanged curious glances, speculating on what could have prompted the CEO, Marcus Williams, to call this meeting. Richard, confident in his untouchable status, sat at the center of the room, smirking at his colleagues. Marcus began the meeting with a firm and calm tone. "Good morning. I'm here today to talk about our company culture. We pride ourselves on our standards, but sometimes to move forward, we need to take a hard look within." Richard, eager to assert himself, interrupted. "Marcus, if we're talking about standards, I'd like to mention that we recently terminated an employee who clearly didn't meet them." But Marcus raised his hand, cutting him off with a quiet yet commanding gesture. "I'd prefer to hear directly from the team. Everyone will have an opportunity to speak." The meeting started with cautious comments. A few employees highlighted positive aspects of their work environment, carefully avoiding any mention of issues. Then, Jason spoke up. His voice was nervous but resolute. "I have something to say. Yesterday, I witnessed an act of blatant injustice. One of our managers, Richard Blake, humiliated a cleaning staff member in front of the entire office. I recorded the incident on video to back up my statement." A heavy silence fell over the room. Richard's eyes narrowed, and his face turned pale. He leapt to his feet, trying to cut Jason off. "That's a lie! It's just—" "Let's allow everyone to speak," Marcus interrupted sharply. Jason connected his phone to the screen and played the video. The recording showed Richard loudly berating Grace, calling her a useless element, and old trash. The room was filled with gasps of horror and outrage. Some employees exchanged uneasy glances. Others whispered quietly among themselves. Marcus, keeping his emotions in check, addressed the group. "Does anyone else have experiences with Richard they'd like to share? This is a safe space. Speak freely." After a moment of tense silence, employees began to speak up. One by one, they recounted their experiences of being belittled and mistreated by Richard. A young woman shared how he had screamed at her over a minor mistake. Another employee mentioned that Richard had discriminated against him because of his background. Richard tried to defend himself. "This is all lies! They're just weak and can't handle competition." But Marcus remained composed. "I've heard enough. As CEO, I won't tolerate such behavior toward anyone in this company. Richard, your employment here is terminated effective immediately." Richard shot to his feet, his face red with rage. "You can't do this! I've given so much to this company!" Marcus cut him off with icy calm. "Don't worry. You'll have the chance to explain yourself to the legal team. But your time here is over." Richard stormed out of the room, under the judgmental and relieved gazes of his colleagues. Once Richard was gone, Marcus turned back to the team. "Now we begin the process of rebuilding our culture. We'll start by implementing programs centered on inclusion and respect." As the meeting ended, Marcus left the room without another word, his expression heavy with thought. There was still one more conversation he needed to have, one far more personal. He had to speak with his mother. The climax and aftermath. After the meeting, Marcus met with his mother in the park. "Mom, I fired Richard, but this is only the beginning," he said. Grace responded calmly. "What matters isn't just firing him. It's the changes you make for the employees." Marcus proposed that she take on an official role as a corporate culture consultant. "I'll accept," she said, "but only if it's for the people who were too afraid to speak up." The following week, the company announced sweeping reforms. Training sessions and open forums were organized to address employee concerns. Grace took on a key role, helping to build a new, inclusive culture from the ground up. Meanwhile, Richard tried to defend himself, but Jason's video served as undeniable evidence of his misconduct. With no one to support him, Richard found himself ostracized and unemployed. Over the next few months, the company's atmosphere underwent a transformation. Employees began working in an environment of trust and mutual respect. Jason, whose courage had sparked the change, was promoted for his bravery and integrity. At a company-wide gathering, Grace addressed the employees. "Now, everyone here feels valued. This is what a real family looks like," Marcus added with pride. "And it's all thanks to you." This story served as a reminder that respect is the foundation of true leadership.